The Home Secretary has pledged to stop protesters from holding the public to ransom in a major crackdown which will see the police given new powers. That's as Just Stop Oil have caused traffic chaos for 2 days, blocking the Dartford crossing. Joining me in the studio, policing commentator Graham Wettone and Just Stop Oil activist James Skeet. James, your second visit in a matter of weeks. Welcome back. Welcome. Good of you to come in. We hear that in breaking news, your protesters are coming down.
I believe so, yes.
Why? Why are they coming down?
I imagine it's a bit cold up there, to be honest, Vanessa. I'm not too sure. I've heard this from you, but yes.
I mean, because you might say, you know, if they've caused this havoc and this consternation and congestion and disruption for 2 days, they might as well stay up there for a few more. I'm not suggesting they do, but I'm kind of surprised they're coming down when nothing at all has been achieved by what they've done so far.
Well, I think what has been achieved is millions of people are talking about the most critical issue facing humanity. What Just Stop Oil is calling for is a halt to any new licensing and consents for any fossil fuel exploration in the UK. And, I mean, this is entirely in line with what the United Nations are telling us and what the International Energy Agency are telling us, that there can be no new investment in these things if we want to ensure, you know, a safe future for
And what
for
do we
British
know
people.
about what the investment is going to be in this?
As in...
I mean, what are you stopping? Are you stopping something that's already happening?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a pledge to invest a certain amount in it?
The government are currently funneling £236 million a week of taxpayers' money, subsidising the most profitable industry on earth. And this is counter to the entire scientific consensus on this issue.
All right, let's bring Graham in on this. I mean, there's been, what do you want to call it? You could call it the most incredible logjam. You could call it terrific delays, 6 miles of traffic piling up. And now they're finally coming down. I'm imagining you're thinking of somewhere else to target next. I'm sure you won't tell me where. And you're sitting observing this, and what are your thoughts?
I don't think direct action process like this have any effect at all. I think we live in a democracy, so I think they're actually alienating the very people they could get on side. There are ways to protest, there are lawful ways to protest. The police are well versed in facilitating lawful protests. You could have very visible protests at locations like the Dartford crossing that the police would be happily facilitate rather than actually disrupting thousands and thousands of people. And I think actually the message is getting lost now. I think people aren't actually listening to really important messages. I get the point. It's a very valid point. Everybody gets the climate crisis, but I think by carrying out direct action like this, people aren't actually listening now to the really key message, and that's the thing with this.
I'm afraid that would be that's sort of not what history shows us with regards to these sorts of actions, though, is it? I mean, disruptive direct action has been shown to work consistently.
Where?
The suffragette movement, the civil rights movement,
that's over 100
the gay
years
rights
ago.
movement, you know.
Yeah.
But I can point to Otpor in Serbia if you want more recent examples.
But not in the UK.
The Arab Spring.
But not in the UK.
I think it works, though. We've got millions of people talking about
But the one thing you quoted was the suffragette one, which is over 100 years ago. And I'll grant you that.
I think it's still relevant, is it not? It's quite important.
I intend to use my vote as soon as I can whenever there is a general election. So, yes, it still has a knock-on effect, definitely. I mean, the headline here, height of stupidity, bridge shut all day after eco-zealots' latest stunt. I suppose, you know, agitation has an impact, it certainly does, and more of an impact, Graham will have to agree, than a peaceful protest, which has no impact, just standing on the side, and people walk past you or drive past you, they can ignore you, they can hoot their horn in support, you make some impact, people can argue, and James argues, not enough of an impact, but disruption, that makes maximum impact, because every single person stuck in that traffic goes home with a view and has to address the topic. But isn't Graham right, though, that it can become counterproductive when every person who's been sitting in a queue for hours on end trying to get somewhere is livid?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously appreciate the aggravation of people, and you know, it doesn't fill me with any joy upsetting anyone. But the reality is, like, we're in a really critical situation here. The government have ignored the warnings for decades, and instead are ploughing ahead with opening 100 new fossil fuel projects. And this is absolute criminality. You know, this is tantamount to treason against the British people.
Well, hang on a minute. I mean, we've got a police officer here. Is it criminality? Is it treason against the British people, or is it a democratically elected government doing what's been elected?
Democratically elected, 0.03% of the population appointed.
But that's
trust. 29% of the population appointed. Johnson
Boris
and his ilk.
Johnson's party with a resounding
Then we could get into the
majority.
constituency boundaries. They haven't been updated since the year 2000.
We
If you think about the demographic
But
shift that have occurred since there, I don't think we live in a democracy.
Is it
No.
criminality?
No, but this is a global crisis as well. This won't affect globally, just affecting what the UK government does. The UK government have a minor part in this, but again, you're alienating the very people you need on side for you by doing this. So if you went to a vote now, if you went to a democratic vote, so people want to support Stop Oil, I guarantee you won't get the support because you're carrying out actions like this. You need to get people on side and listen to you. People aren't listening. They might be talking about the protests, but they're not talking about the actual climate crisis. They're talking about the disruption. So actually your tactics having a negative effect on your very, very message that you need to get out, which is people need to understand climate crisis and talk about it and act on it, not on how long the bridge has been crossed, because that's all they're talking about.
For the record, like we don't do this, based on just on a whim. We do this on the basis of decades and decades of social science that show that forcing this discussion is actually highly effective.
You're going to have to explain something that you've already explained to me last time, just in case people didn't hear you or see you last time. I said to you that the people who are being disrupted, so let's say it's a teacher, let's say it's a plasterer, let's say it's a mum with 2 children in the back of the car, they can't do anything. So disrupting their lives isn't going to affect, is it? And certainly not in the immediate period after it. They can't do anything to change government policy or reroute funds. So what's the point of disrupting them? If it were Parliament, I'm not suggesting you should, but I mean, if it were sitting MPs, if it were the House of Commons, if it were, a member of the cabinet, I still don't think it would make any difference, but it would certainly be more pointed and more targeted. But if it's just, an old age pensioner going to choose a cake, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It is outrageous, and people have a right to be frustrated by this. But what I would say is that if you're annoyed by this, you should also be annoyed by the 100 new fossil fuel licenses that the government are plowing ahead with. We hit 40 degrees C in this country earlier this year. As a result of that, 60 UK families had their houses burned down in wildfires. There was something between 3,000 and 16,000 extra deaths, depending on how long you look over that period. A third of our wheat yields are down. We're projected to lose 50% of our potato crops. I could go on and on and on.
There's something about your going on and on and on, which kind of sets up a kind of cycle of resistance, possibly. Let's go to Michael, who's on the line in Dartford, so therefore is at the sharp end of all of this. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Vanessa.
Oh, thanks for ringing. So tell me what it's been like from your end.
Chaos. Absolute chaos.
Describe.
You can't move around here.
Is it the sharp end of all of this? Hi, Michael.
Yeah,
I'll turn off the telly or the radio so I don't have to hear myself coming back at myself.
And I won't
do that.
Listen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Around here,
yeah,
you've got 3 major A&E hospitals. Darren Valley is 2 miles from where them idiots are sitting on the bridge. No one can get to Darren Valley, so they're sending all the really major cases to Queen Elizabeth at Woolwich,
right,
or
another hospital somewhere else. Okay, don't worry about it. You've lost your thread. It's okay. But James is sitting next to me. You said them idiots. Well, he's one of them, let's face it. Did you not hear, though, what he said about fuels and the planet and criminality and how it's urgent and how we should be very, very annoyed about that rather than very, very annoyed about being disrupted in Dartford?
Yeah.
And what did you think of that?
There were people dying in the back of ambulances.
With respect, Michael, there are people dying all over the world right now.
Good or whatever.
As I said, 16,000 between 3,000 and 16,000
35 minutes longer to get to Darren Valley. Now, they're diverting people to Woolwich and Loxbottom. It would take another 30 odd minutes. People are dying in hospitals. People are, this is so wrong. You don't know how bad it is.
I mean, have you actually heard of anyone actually dying because of the delay in going to a hospital they wouldn't have normally gone to? You haven't heard of anyone?
Disrespect, Vanessa.
Yes.
Your people can get in touch with Darren Valley,
and
Queen Elizabeth, and Royal whatever in Locksbottom and find how many people have been dragged out of ambulances dead
Michael,
because of these idiots.
I mean, Michael, you sound very emotional about it, and I'm not surprised. I'm not thinking you should sound any other way. I can see why you'd sound so enormously emotional. James, it sounds as if you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as if you're saying, yeah, people will die. Yeah, more people are dying. What are you saying?
Well, I mean, with all due respect to Michael, he's talking about potential hypotheticals. Now, obviously, I don't want to downplay the seriousness of this. It's a horrible situation. But, like, let's look at the situation right now. As I said, between 3,000 and 16,000 extra deaths this summer due to the 40-degree heat. There's 33 million people displaced in Pakistan. And the government are ploughing ahead with opening 100 new fossil fuel projects. And this is, you know, this is not going to help with the cost of living crisis right now, OK? All that does is insulate the pockets of billionaires rather than insulate the homes of the British people, something that would actually help people who are going to die this winter. People are going to die this winter because they can't afford to pay their bills.
I'm going to say thank you to Michael. And I'm going to bring Graham back in. I mean, you hear, obviously, there's a great deal of passion all over the shop on this one. And very often people say, well, I'm broadly supportive of the protesters. I broadly agree with them. Of course, I don't want the planet all crunched up and ruined when it comes to my great-grandchildren. I see why they're doing it. I get it. I just wish they weren't doing it that way. Is that pretty much what do you think? Or have you lost,
absolutely.
Have you lost patience now?
I don't want to do it this way
absolutely.
either.
People aren't talking about the real issue, which is the climate emergency, and all the things that James has just mentioned. This will have no impact on what's happening in Pakistan, and it has no impact on globally. You're disrupting police action, so you've got police officers now dealing with this, a couple of hundred officers a day who are taken away from dealing with crime. So it will have an impact on people. People will be affected, either injured or suffering crimes because police officers aren't on the streets to help them. Ambulances will have to be diverted. I drove through Darrant Valley on Sunday. Going over to the crossing. So that area will be absolutely gridlocked because of this action. So it will cause huge impact on all the services in there. And the real message isn't getting across here. These direct action protests, they happened once, about 100 years ago in the suffragettes, had one impact. No other protest with direct action has had a massive... You haven't. I used to work on this. There's no direct action had a massive impact on any causes at all. You need to get out on the street and actually get your voices, your actual voice and the message across, rather than disrupting them to the public.
Though, we wouldn't be sat in this studio having this conversation, though, would we?
You can. You can still come in. The news agent.
Yes, I'm sure.
We'll still have you in. Without shutting down the bridge, we'll still invite you back. You don't have to go to just to get an invitation here. You don't need to go to those extreme measures. Graham Wettone and James Skeet, thank you very much indeed for coming in.